Welcome back to It Ain't Rocket Science. I'm Adam Balkin. For those of you with space aspirations, you may be thinking it'll be years before you get your turn for launch, but it may actually be closer than you think. A group of students in upstate New York are prepping for an experience usually reserved for space travelers. Seth Voorhees has the story.
It is your typical high school classroom.
The fact that this number is so high.
But for a handful of Fairport High School students, a classroom they'll travel to in the spring is anything but typical.
It's a pretty amazing experience for the kids.
There's the zero-G plane, and some of the teachers have gone on it before.
Here's video proof of that. Fairport teachers earlier this year flying in zero gravity, conducting experiments on a project Fairport students created. And now students will get to do the same. A rare opportunity to take part in the NASA Hunch Extreme Science program.
We always felt as teachers that we weren't giving the students the full experience. So when NASA came to us and said, do you want to do this? We jumped at the chance.
I thought it was kind of cool, and I just wanted to do it because I'm very interested in science.
What exactly the students will build, they have yet to decide on, but the experiment must be up and running in the classroom by January. And in April, 3 students will get to fly in the zero-G plane. Though NASA's helping with parts, students will need to raise money for their creation, which will eventually go on board the International Space Station.
Everybody has a bad day in lab. When's yours going to be?
One which puts them in a classroom unlike any they've ever been in before. For It Ain't Rocket Science, I'm Seth Voorhees.
And in the near future, the zero gravity experience won't be reserved just for astronauts and those taking zero-G flights. In the Mojave Desert in California, one company is doing its part to make space accessible to everyone.
It's a scenario that's only been seen in sci-fi. Everyday people traveling to the stars.
What we're doing is really cutting edge. We're changing the paradigm of access to space.
Enrico Palermo is one of the engineers working towards developing commercial space flights at Virgin Galactic, one of the companies in the modern-day space race to get tourists off Earth.
Traditionally, space has been very expensive to access. Also, reliability of the various vehicles hasn't been that high. And what we're doing with Spaceship 2 and White Knight 2 and future derivatives is having this inflection point where a lot more people start to fly to space.
Just over 500 people have been into space since spaceflight began in the 1960s. And Palermo says Virgin Galactic alone has over 600 customers and future astronauts signed up to launch. He says once we overcome the hurdle of starting commercial spaceflight, it will open the door for limitless possibilities.
There's going to be very rapid progression now of different applications of using space. There's companies talking about mining asteroids. There's concepts of space hotels.
For Enrico, his involvement in this project is something he's been working towards since he was young.
I must admit I was a big Star Trek fan and certainly watched it all. Also as a young student and individual, I love taking things apart. So sort of always wanted to know why something was what it is or how something was. Really led me on this path.
And his advice for other space enthusiasts and future engineers?
Ask why. Ask why things are they are. Always challenge why we do something. I think really get an appreciation for the world around you.
Virgin Galactic plans on launching its first group of space tourists next year. For It Ain't Rocket Science, I'm Bree Driscoll.
Not long ago, one of the world's most daring stuntmen took his own trip to the edge of space. Our Shazia Khan got the chance to go behind the scenes of the company that made it possible and check out how the Red Bull Stratos capsule was built.
It was an event that almost half the world's population watched. Felix Baumgartner's record-setting jump from the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, 128,000 feet above the ground. But it wasn't a walk in the park. Science played a huge part in keeping Felix safe.
Red Bull Stratos, there's a number of different challenges. Of course, one of the first ones is how to protect somebody at a near space environment. We used a spacesuit, basically. The next step is the space capsule. Having to design something large enough that allows somebody in a pressurized spacesuit to exit out of the door and then go into free fall.
The event was the most watched streaming event in history and took up 7% of the world's bandwidth on the internet at the height of the jump. but it also made some important landmarks in the name of science.
A lot of scientific data that was accomplished by making this jump. One being that he was able to break the speed of sound. No one had ever done that without an airplane.
Here at the Say Cheshire Workshop in Lancaster, California, Art and his team work on a wide range of projects. Whether it's working on things like the Red Bull Stratos capsule, government contracts, or designing props for movies, they put an emphasis on accomplishing the seemingly impossible.
In my mind, I never think about that something can't be done. I'm always thinking about how do we do it.
And that's what he hopes Stratos did for a generation of young scientists and engineers.
One of the best things that comes out of Stratos is really the education, the inspiration of the next generation. You know, for me, when I was a kid, watching man land on the moon was an inspiration. It inspired me to think about aerospace, about science. I mean, we inspired tomorrow's astronauts, tomorrow's aerospace engineers, tomorrow's mathematicians and scientists. And I'm really excited about thinking in the future to see what's going to come out of that on the basis of all those kids in school.
For It Ain't Rocket Science, I'm Shazia Khan.
Felix's free fall went off without a hitch, but one of the fall's biggest blockbusters is about what could go wrong in a space flight mission. Our Neil Rosen got the inside scoop from the director, actors, and an astronaut who spent time in space himself.
It's a film about a disaster scenario in space. Gravity is the latest sci-fi flick to hit the big screens. But how much is entertainment and how much could actually happen?
The movie is very technically accurate. There's an amazing amount of photorealistic detail in all of the interiors of the spacecraft, and the exterior views, they're phenomenal. Best I've ever seen. I mean, you are in space. You almost forget that you're sitting in a chair watching this movie.
Tom Jones is a former astronaut who conducted several spacewalks while on active duty, and he says the film took him back to his trip into orbit. In the movie, actors George Clooney and Sandra Bullock are stranded in space after orbiting debris destroys their spacecraft, and they were buzzing about the science on the red carpet at the premiere.
When we got into the Soyuz and in the Shenzhou, which are the sort of the pods that travel the astronauts back down to Earth and around space, I loved knowing how they worked, why they were designed that way. The design of them are absolutely extraordinary.
We were very adamant that the physics and mechanics of zero-G in space would be properly represented. And I'm very flattered, I'm very happy that to hear that astronauts, they really like the representation of that world up there.
An excitement many in the science and technology industry hope translates to audiences.
In our culture today, I think we need to do more to celebrate science and technology and get people excited about it. And in a funny way, even a disaster movie still gets people excited about the potential of space.
Tom Jones says he hopes that some of the younger audience will take that excitement with them into the future.
For young people today, they'll see, I think, the beauty of spaceflight. They'll see the strange environment that you have to challenge yourself in. They'll see the hazards that are connected with it, but that won't turn them away, I think, from their interest in applying what they can learn in math and science and engineering to maybe future careers there.
Inspiring a generation of future space travelers to push the limits and embark into new frontiers. For It Ain't Rocket Science, I'm Neil Rosen.
Science Meets the Stage. Coming up, we'll take a look at how one STEM act could wind up at your school soon. And the science of Broadway, we'll talk to one special effects pro on his experience making magic happen on the stage. For more information about science, technology, engineering, and math opportunities in your community, visit connectamillionminds.com during the break.